Tarry here, where the stories never grow old, and you hear something new every time they are told, and it comes clear. So tarry here, where it doesn't matter your age, and when we gather round the table, we all take the stage year after year. So tarry here, where
Welcome to the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour at enlightenradio.org. This is your storytelling host, Fanny Crawford.
And this is your other host, Stasi Olkowski.
And we're glad to be seeing you, hearing you, welcoming you to storytelling this morning. Today is May 4th, 2020, and our theme today is fire.
Yes.
We have some amazing fire stories ready for you. Whenever Sasha's talking about fire, the stories are amazing. So we're guaranteed to have some excitement. So Stash, it's been several days since I spoke with you last.
It has.
How's your week been?
It's been fine. It's been really good. I've had a couple of nice walks. Terry and I walked at the down at the towpath on Thursday, I believe, and we had a nice walk there, about 1.75 miles. And then yesterday evening, it was so pleasant, we went and walked from our house up to the cemetery. That's on the main road, right up at the end of Main Street, as you leave Sharpsburg, heading to Boonsboro. And then we sat on our front porch for a while. It was very pleasant. Yesterday was an interesting day. It was the most traffic that I have observed, and Terry also, I'm sure, in town in at least a month and maybe more. We've been on this lockdown for 7 weeks now. That I believe that's what we calculated. And the traffic has slowed down. Of course, the ice cream shop has been closed for the last 3.5 weeks. And the number of cars, truly, I could do a documentary on the sad faces of the people who drive up Mechanic Street here in Sharpsburg, slow down in front of the shop. Some of them even park, get out of their car, and then their face looks like someone just told them that the planet was doomed, because all kinds of people. I mean, Sunday morning, where there must have been, I lost count at 30 motorcycles that had stopped. Usually in groups of 4 to 6. Once in a while, it'll be 2 people, but pulled over, and and the one group of 4 motorcyclists talked to me about it because I was sitting on the porch. Then said, "What's going on here? Nutters is closed." I said, "Yep, it is." I said, they closed down because of the pandemic, and they won't be open again until somebody makes an announcement and they consider it. I said, because the guy said, I've never seen them closed. He was very disappointed because the other 3 motorcyclists with him had never been in this part of Maryland, and he had promised them a treat at Nutters.
Oh,
and so it's interesting. And then I had a very impressive thing, or an interesting thing happened about Nutters. I got an email from a classmate of mine from 1966, graduated at Mount St. Mary's.
Wow.
From a man by the name of Al Bertino. And in his email, he reminded me of it. He said his name and reminded me that he lived on the same dorm I did on Bradley Hall when we were sophomores. And of course, I wrote back to him right away. So I'm very excited to hear from you. We hadn't talked or seen each other about since 1966, our graduation. And anyway, it turns out he lives in Shepherdstown. And he's married and has a big family and grandchildren and everything. And he said, well, Sharpsburg, that's neat. Whenever my grandchildren visit us, we take them to Nutters for ice cream treats. So I said, well, it'd be easy for you to find our home since it's next door. So, and he was writing to me about, because our reunion is next year, 2021, which would be an enormous number of years. I guess it's 55 years.
That's impressive, Stash.
Yeah, and was nice because when I looked in my emails, I had a note from the officers or the men who have taken charge of our reunion next year, and they had listed all the people, all the men that they had sent out notices to, with the list, quite a few of them, and asked that if anyone knew of somebody else that we could send their contact information to, and there are a few people I can add to that list. So I'm excited to see people that I haven't seen in 55 years.
Yeah, and they haven't seen you in 55 years.
Right. They won't recognize me.
Really?
Well, I don't know. I did start my beard when I was a sophomore in college. I only wore it for about 2 months, but they might remember that.
I think you haven't changed as much as some people.
No, but except for those 2 months near the end of the soccer season until the Christmas vacation, that's the only time I had a beard. Then until 1967 or 68.
But you're a famous storyteller. Maybe they've seen your picture.
They might have. I was well known in college. Only 725 men on the campus. College the way it's supposed to be without any women for men. It's true. If I had gone to a co-ed high school, I would still be in 9th grade. I firmly believe that. I could not have gone to school with women and paid attention, especially in chemistry.
Okay, we are 6 minutes into the show, and I have not thanked Andy Offit-Irwin yet for tarrying here, for opening the show.
I sure wish you would, because he's really a very important person.
And he's doing lots of storytelling. You can hear him do storytelling online. He's doing group things and solo things, and
I had a great laugh watching his one of the things on, I guess it was on Friday. So we're 7 minutes in now.
Yes.
Okay.
We are in agreement on that.
How about that? We are in agreement. That's good.
Okay,
well, we agree on lots of things.
Usually it takes a while.
Right. I can't think of too many things we disagree on.
Oh, I can.
Actually,
but that's okay.
There are always things that you bring up.
It's always my fault.
Mm-mm.
Tell us about Speak.
Okay. Speak presents Kevin Kling online.
Woohoo!
Okay.
I'm excited.
Tuesday, May 12th at 7:30 p.m., Speak will present Kevin Kling in concert. Because we cannot gather to experience the show live, we will use Zoom to share Kevin's concert over the internet. You don't need to have a registered Zoom account, but you need the app to attend the concert. And in this message that I got from our leader, Adam Booth, so
fearless leader.
Yeah, I didn't say fearless because it's so weird. if you're a leader, you got to be fearless, or else they'll cut you down. So every attendee needs to register for the concert. So after you register, you'll receive an email with the link, the way we have for John and us doing the radio. And that link you will use on Tuesday, May 12th to attend the concert. If you are a season ticket holder, you have already paid, but you still need to register below or register for the concert. If you are not a season ticket holder but would like to attend, we ask that you register with the link and then send a check for $12 payable to Shepherd University with the Memo Online Speak Story Series. So, that's great.
Okay, I'm going to have to think about my preparations because I'm going to need popcorn and I'm going to need something to wash the popcorn down. And I need to arrange a comfy place to watch because Jose's a season ticket holder also. So we'll be watching together. And he's never heard Kevin. So this will be exciting.
Right. So you have Zoom on your computer, right? On your laptop?
Yeah.
Oh, so just sit on the couch. You two could snuggle up and... That's
what we'll do.
And yeah, that's how Terry and I use my iPad to do that.
Okay.
Because like tonight we will have a meeting of our trivia team and last for about an hour, and there will be in many places. Well, at least 1, 2, 3, 4 different places because of the team doesn't all live together.
I'm relieved to hear that. Believe me.
Yes.
I did watch Mark and Julia Bruce, or a part of Mark and Julia's podcast from their front porch.
Oh, yeah.
I was on Facebook and I brought them up, and I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did watch a good chunk of it. And that was fun. Yeah. They were waving to neighbors. And
they know a lot of people. Well, they're pretty established Sound people.
Yeah, they have a house too.
Terry and I watched that. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a little while to figure out how to comment, but
I didn't bother to comment.
I made some comments because
that's too much work.
Well, it's it might be my age, but my relationship with Julia is similar to ours. We get along
trying
really.
To make me jealous?
No. Get along very well, but she and I, there are a few points she and I disagree on.
Well, I'm shocked. I'm truly shocked. Okay, we should get to a story. We are already almost 10 minutes into the show.
I know, we are.
11, almost 12 minutes into the show. Okay, you're going to tell a story to start?
Yes. Let's see. And I even thought we could do this in a sort of a special way. Either fire as education, or fire to get people's attention, or fire that is scary and extremely dangerous, or fire that injured someone.
These are 4 different story options?
Yeah.
Or just you're thinking about different themes for the same story?
Oh, no, this is 4 different. I've been involved in fire a number of times in my life. Touched by fire.
Okay, well, you choose.
Okay. The simplest one is something that you've heard me talk about, I'm sure. But as a young teacher, I discovered I just realized that I start a lot of stories that I tell with that phrase, as a young teacher. I discovered that one of the best ways to begin a class is not asking people to be quiet, not telling people to sit down, as I remember in my own experience, but doing something that gets their attention, even if you don't say, okay, I want you to watch this. And I discovered that methane gas, well, I knew this in college. So early on in my career, I discovered that methane gas could be bubbled through soap solution, or like a dishwashing solution of soap and water. And if you bubbled that gas into the water, because methane is less dense than air, it will form like a honeycomb of bubbles, and the honeycomb will get bigger and bigger and bigger in the water, and that honeycomb will start to lift out of the water, and eventually it will break off and float to the ceiling of the room. Well, what I would do at the beginning of class, and if I could teach chemistry again, I would do it this way. Every class, the first class in chemistry, I would set up a Bunsen burner with a tube running from the gas jet that looked like it went to the Bunsen burner, but really I just go around the Bunsen burner once and then put the end of the tube into the sink. And as the kids were coming in, I would have my name written on the chalkboard and my phone number, because I gave my phone number to students all the time. All 40 years I taught. Saved them and me a lot of grief. And as the bubbles were forming in the sink, I would go on with, things like, this is my phone number. If you have trouble with your homework or you need any help, give me a call at night, and just don't make it after 9:30 because I have children and I don't want to wake them up. And bubbles would be forming, and behind me at the chalk tray, I wonder, do they even have chalk trays in classes anymore?
I think so.
I would have a candle taped to the end of a meter stick, and it would be lit. And it would be behind me, and so only someone who was really bored would stand, look around what's behind me. I can't imagine. But so when those bubbles separated, and it would usually be about 2 feet tall and maybe a foot wide, a nice big honeycomb of bubbles. As soon as it began to separate and start to float to the ceiling, I would pick up the meter stick, and when the bubbles got just near the ceiling, I would put the candle flame to the bubbles. There would be an incredible eruption, not very loud, not very loud, but there would be this whoosh of flame, bright blue flame shooting across the ceiling because it had no place to go but outwards. There would be some droplets of soapy water that was on the bubbles that fell on the class. This is not being sexist, but usually some girls would scream. Once in a while, there would be a boy who would yell or scream. And then within seconds, at least one boy, and very often many of them, would shout, "Do that again!" And so I would. And then I would tell them what I was doing and explain about the density of methane and how it is flammable. And that was the beginning of a chemistry class. And I did that for many, many years. And it always told the students that they were in for some fun and that I was going to be, if not a great teacher or even a good teacher, at least an interesting teacher. And I often pointed that out.
Was that first class legendary? Did most of the kids know that was going to happen when they got to your class?
Some did, but generally I would say to the kids, now don't tell anybody the rest of the day, because at that time I taught 4 chemistry classes, and I said I'd like it to be a surprise for each of them. But word got around school very quickly. I was known as Mr. Z for all 40 years, and I had a reputation for doing things that other teachers wouldn't dare do in the classroom. Nothing that would hurt anyone, But I taught the kids to do some interesting things, and if they understood the chemistry and sometimes the math involved, they could, do some of those interesting things too when they became an adult, or even sooner, because kids like things that go boom, change colors, and are on fire. And the only people who did not like my demonstration of that were some of the administrators. Typically, there would be a vice principal that was assigned to the science teachers, and they typically thought that wasn't interesting enough. However, I actually taught for I had been doing that for 3 years or so before the first administrator actually came and watched it and admitted that he would have liked my class. Because if I did things like that, he knew that he would have been interested. So that was nice. So it did cost me a little bit of money, because I would tell the custodian from the beginning of the year, I'd tell whoever was in charge of the chemistry wing or the science wing and cleaned it, took care of that they would sometimes have to replace the tiles in the ceiling right above my desk. And I would say, if you just let me know what those tiles cost, I will be glad to pay for them so that the school system doesn't suffer on the budget end. And I always gave that custodian, whoever changed those, I always gave them a tip. So, and I did become legendary for setting fires.
And I'm sure you have a few more stories for us. Okay, well, that's a good one.
Yes.
I wanted to let people know they're listening to the Enlighten Storytelling Hour at enlightenradio.org, broadcasting via Bolivar, West Virginia, although we are sitting in different places right now because we are sheltering in place.
Yeah.
But we're happy to be here. I do love that story, Stash. I don't know that I've heard the methane story before. I've heard several fire and explosion stories.
Yeah.
From your classrooms, but not that particular one.
Well, that's one of the things I loved. I loved teaching chemistry and math, and I loved teaching the early science when I taught elementary school for a total of 9 years out of the 40. But there's just nothing like having the best toys in the building. I always told the English teachers and the history teachers how sad I was for them, because I knew their children were often bored and they didn't have any toys. The best they could do is read an exciting sentence or paragraph from page 127.
None of the teachers had toys? I find that very hard to believe.
What toys would you have in English?
I would have props. I would have stuff for the kids to handle and develop stories about. I would bring animals into class. I would bring
in high school.
In high school.
And you would have been the crazy Miss Fanny, which is fine.
That's why I'm not a teacher, because I have trouble with boundaries.
Right. High school teachers, and I can't think of any high school teacher that I knew who taught English that was, no, I take that back, only one that taught English that I thought kept the kids really entertained because they didn't know for sure what he was going to do or how. And that was my 9th grade English teacher, Mr. Schloter, who.
Well, I had English teachers who brought stuff in, not regularly, but I did have people who were good role models for being creative and
I just think it's hard because there's they don't have, things don't change color, they don't
they can
but they don't do it. They don't.
I know.
That's the thing, and unfortunately, it's because they're taught in their teacher education courses. They're taught to believe or act as if every student is just dying to hear pearls of wisdom.
Well, that's
about
not just
English literature.
It's not. That's not English. That's taught across the board in teacher ed.
Oh yeah, it is.
It is a little different now, but still.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I always felt bad for them. I never took any education courses until I found out, after I'd been teaching, that if I got a master's degree and I got my teaching certificate from the state and took all these courses, I would get a raise. I was flabbergasted that just by going to school, they'd give me more money.
Yeah, you and I are never going to agree on that. I'm all for education through the lifespan.
I am too.
So why is it ridiculous that you should get a pay bump?
Maybe you didn't get any better as a teacher. How would they know? Just because you got a piece of paper that says you have a master's degree doesn't mean you are a better teacher.
You're a cynic.
No, I'm a realist.
Most people benefit from education, just like most kids benefit from education. Not all of them, but most of them do. So do adults.
Okay, you probably believe in tenure.
That's a whole different issue.
Well, I see that's something I don't believe in.
Well, for me, it's wrapped up with parent engagement and community engagement, and so it's much more complicated than yes or no tenure. Except
that in most public school systems, there's a minimum number of years you must teach. Unlike colleges, in college you have to prove yourself.
That's not entirely true.
Well,
let's leave this subject. We're supposed to be talking about fire.
Well,
before we burn the radio station
you can get fired if you don't do a good job.
Okay, I'm going to tell a story because we are now, since I'm been doing such a good job keeping time.
Minutes.
That's right, 26 plus. Okay.
All right. Okay.
So here's another fire story, and this is part of a project I'm working on to develop an hour-long performance about Hagerstown, Maryland, where I live. And so I've been interviewing Hagerstonians and collecting stories from them. And it has been so much fun. And I'm learning so much about the city. Some of it's frightening in terms of changes that are out there and changes that are coming, and just things I had no idea about. Much of it's about the arts. Some of it's about social justice issues. Some of it's just about people having fun. But so this is a story that was memorable to me when I was doing my interviews. So I'm not going to give any autobiographical details about the speaker, the person who told me this story, because I'm still figuring out how to handle all of that. But here goes. I was born in 1951 in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. All four of us middle kids were born there, but I don't remember that. The first place I remember living was the west end of Hagerstown, and I went to first grade at Winter Street School there. After that, we lived in an apartment on the third floor of a building further east on Franklin Street, right downtown, just 3 buildings from the corner of Franklin and Jonathan Street. Trudy, my sister, was in first grade, and she was born in 1962. So that must have been 1968, right? 1968. the best part of being downtown was having all the stores so close. Dick's Market was right there with the fruit stand and the meat counter on Jonathan Street. And then half a block away was the Acme store. The other way on Franklin at Potomac Street was the old A&P grocery, and Grand Union used to be there. I remember collecting green stamps from Grand Union. Mom and Pap used to let me collect all the family's green stamps and stick them in the books. And then I could spend them any way I wanted to. I mostly bought things for the family. I got a toaster one time for the whole family. I didn't get things for myself, things the whole family could use. We walked from the apartment to the alley next to our building, walked the alley toward Washington Street till we got to the back entrance of McCrory's. You could go through and come out the front entrance of McCrory's onto Washington Street and go to Newberry's and Revco, Woolworths. There was a store we called the Paper Store where we bought our school supplies. And there were 3 movie theaters. Every Saturday, 25, 35 cents. That's what we called downtown. One theater was just after you turned the corner from Washington Street onto Potomac, where that church is now. It still looks like a movie theater. And 2 more theaters across the street where the Maryland Theater is now. Debbie and me, my youngest sister, closest to me, we went to the movies most every Saturday. Debbie always had an idea, some idea of how to get us all in trouble. If I got in trouble, it was Debbie's fault every time. One Saturday, we went to the movies, but Debbie wanted to get a pee-pee, an Easter chicken, a real baby chicken from the quarries. She must have had some money. We got 2 cents for every soda bottle we found. Well, later on, we got 5 cents. But by then, we were babysitting, and we liked that better. When we were 12 and 13, Mom let us take care of the neighbors' kids, as long as we did it together. We got 50 cents an hour, but we had to split it. Later on, we could babysit on our own. Anyway, McCrory's had those pee-pees every year for Easter. Of course, we lived in an apartment. Mom did not want pee-pees in the apartment. Who knows what made Deb think she could get away with that? When we got home, Deb told Mom she won her pee-pee as a prize at the theater, but she really spent her money for it at McCrory's. That didn't matter to Mom either way. No pee-pee in the apartment. Mom made her give it away to somebody who had more space. Mom would take us shopping at McCrory's, really all those stores. But the Saturday before Easter, Newberry's, 2 blocks down, would take down all their Easter things. Well, they all did. But Newberry's was best then, the best prices. So we'd go, me and Debbie, to see if it was all down and come back and tell Mom about all the goodies. She liked to wait for the sales. And then she'd go and buy her goodies for Easter. That was always a good time of year. Oh, I wanted to tell you, we lived downtown in another place, too. It must have been 76. We moved to the 2nd floor of the Bickles building, almost all the 2nd floor. I think it must have been a business at some time, maybe a doctor's office. One of the rooms was really big. I mean, really big. By then, it was just me and Pap and Mom and Trudy. My brother, Doug, the one who passed away in 2007, he lived in that room till he got married. But he left a lot of stuff in that big room. All their wedding gifts from the family. Deb and Donnie were already married, and Doug had moved out. So it was February 1978. That's really the story I came here to tell you. Trudy was in her first year of high school, my little sister. Ninth grade was the first year of high school. Some schools started at 10th, but ours started 9th grade. We lived in the Bickles building. This was 40 years ago. 3 years, 3 doors from People's Drugstore downtown. Woolworths was still across the street, but the others were all gone. It's not like the stores when we were younger. But I wanted to tell you about the fire. We used to watch a neighbor's baby, her little girl, when it was cold out. Well, she took the 5-year-old to school, so she didn't have to take the baby out every time. That family lived on the second floor, too. And there was another child, a boy Trudy's age, that family lived on the upper floor. Pap was at work that day, and Trudy was at school. But that boy, her age, seemed like he was home a lot. This day, that boy was home. We saw flames shooting up in the back of the apartment. Mom and me, we saw them from the front. We just got out fast into the hall and went to tell the other families. Our neighbor on the second floor was trying to collect the 5-year-old and the 2-year-old, but they were all scared and crying. She was trying to get them out the hall window onto the fire escape, but they were crying and all so scared she couldn't manage them. It was scary. We could hear the fire even out in the hall. I was grown up and I was scared too. So imagine how those little kids felt. Mom and me, we just each grabbed one of the children by the hand and got them out. Mom grabbed the 2-year-old girl by the hand and got her out. And I had the 5-year-old. She climbed out herself once I got hold of her. But we all had to go out the window. It was the bad fire. I won't ever forget it. It was February. Somebody called the fire department. When we got outside, it was cold. The firemen got right there right away, and they took us to a building up the street. They had to get that other family with the boy Trudy's age, out on the 3rd floor. The fire spread, and they couldn't get out by then on their own. The firemen got everybody out. All the streets were blocked off. I don't know how Donnie heard about the fire, but he came running. The police wouldn't let him through, and he argued with them, said his in-laws were in the building, and he had to be sure we were okay. They couldn't stop him. He found us. We lost everything in the fire. Either water damage or smoke damage. There was nothing to salvage. Doug lost all those wedding gifts. I mean, that was the tragedy. No one was hurt, but there was such a pile of beautiful things that were lost. We went to stay at Deb and Donnie's. We had just been there for dinner the night before, cooking fried chicken. That was good fried chicken, too, that we made. We were there to help Deb and Donnie pack. They were moving to a new place. And the next day, the day of the fire, we had to move in with them. Mom didn't want the 4 of us, her and Pap and me and Trudy, to split up. So Deb and Donnie left that apartment faster than they would have to give us the space. We started moving them out right away the next day so we could move in. And first, the landlord said we could live there, but a week later, the landlord said, no, we had to move. We decided they must have got somebody who would pay more. But anyway, we had to leave there. So Deb and Donnie found us a townhouse where they had moved. It's the Bradford Apartments now, off the dual highway. But back then, it was just brand new houses. The insides of the houses were finished, but not the sidewalks or the street. Years later, Debbie and Donnie had Bubba's, their restaurant at Maryland Avenue and Howard Street. You remember Bubba's? Yeah, that little girl came in there 20 years later and told them it was her. She was the little girl we helped out the window in the fire. She remembered living on the 2nd floor next to Deb before Deb got married to Donnie. We all laughed about that she remembered us because she was so little back then. That's a good story, huh?
That is a good story. I enjoyed that very much. How many of those are you going to tell in an hour?
5.
5, wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's the plan. Who knows?
Yeah.
Some of them might be shorter.
Right.
How long was that? Wasn't that?
It was about 8 or 9 minutes.
Yeah, I was planning on 10, so I figured it would be in that neighborhood.
That's good. And it sounded like you were doing a voice.
I was, and I have a way to go with that voice. She has that particular person. So when I end up telling the stories, they might end up being composites, depending on what the messages are from each person, depending on the stories. Right. But she has a really amazing voice, a distinctive voice, and I would like to be able to replicate that. But this is a pale imitation so far.
Well, I know that's one of the things you work on.
I do.
Yep. I love hearing my own voice. So,
were there parts of the story that were hard to understand because I wasn't using my own voice?
No, but I had to watch instead of just listen because it seemed like there was a visit at times from an old friend.
A visit at times from an old friend?
Yes.
Is this someone I know?
It's someone that you portray a lot.
Oh.
Just a couple of times there were sentences that you said, and if I had my eyes closed and was just listening, like our listeners are, I would have said, "Wow, I didn't know that TH lived in Hagerstown."
I thought you were going to say "and Irene." No.
You didn't. And Irene is so much more distinctive than TH. And actually, and Irene is my favorite relative of yours. I think she must have been a beauty. I've only seen her in her bathrobe and with her hair up or her hair wrapped, but
she was quite the fashion plate in the really old photos. I have a picture of her in a two-piece bathing suit and a hat.
Wow.
With feathers. That's pretty amazing.
There was a word there that I have never heard in my childhood. Didn't hear anybody refer to those baby chicks
as peepees.
We called them peeps.
Yeah, we called them peepers, but but she calls them peepees, which is startling the first time you hear it.
I know. I was thinking, whoa, wait a minute. This is a family show.
That's right.
But I do, I realize people use all kind of different words for the same thing.
Yeah.
So, I think that was nice. I'm looking forward to when you put this show together because.
Oh, me too.
I want to see the 5 people.
You're not alone.
Right. Okay. Well, everyone, you're listening to Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour from Bolivar, West Virginia, with me, Stasi Olkowski, and
Fanny Crawford.
Yes, who just told a marvelous story from a group of stories that she's working on to present someplace in Hagerstown, I guess.
Yeah, probably all over Hagerstown. That's the point.
Well, that sounds wonderful. And while I was listening to that, I was trying to imagine the setting for when you will tell the story, but I can't. I don't know Hagerstown well enough. So that would be, I think that a performance like that would be wonderful, either outside or else in a nice room, like a big room in the library.
Mm-hmm. Probably all of those.
Yeah, that's good. You'll get a lot of mileage out of that. Okay, so what are we doing now?
You're telling a story.
Oh, okay. Well, I have there's a real short reference here in my list that I know you have seen. One of the things that I have been carrying now for over 20 years called a flash ring.
Oh, yeah.
And it is just incredible at getting people's attention. Because I can wear it. Actually, I can keep it on my hand all day. And I did do this in the classroom. Sometimes I would have it on my hand and not use it. It would be ready to go, but I would keep it just in case there was some moment in class when I needed to get everyone's attention for some special reason. And I first heard of it when I was performing in the drama Dracula, a serious stage play about the infamous vampire. And the man playing Dracula at one point had to point at me while I was looking into a mirror. So he was behind me, about 15 feet across the room. And he had to point at me and cause the mirror to crack. And of course, I had devised a way to make the mirror crack. Somebody backstage pulled it apart, sort of. Anyway, that's not the important part. The important part was he kept trying to figure out how to convey that to the audience without saying, I'm going to crack the mirror or something else. And he bought a flash ring. And the first time he did it in rehearsal was amazing because all he had to do was point his finger and at the same time spin a little wheel on the ring, which is hidden. And right out of his hand comes a ball of fire. And so every time, in every performance, I think we did 6 performances, the audience would react, some with screams and some with howls and all that stuff. And from the day he came in and used that in the first rehearsal, I found out where he got it, and I bought 2 of those. And I've been carrying a flash ring in my pants ever since.
In your pants?
I carry it in my watch pocket of my pants so that if I need it, I can just reach in and put it on my finger and astonish people. And I've used it a number of times in storytelling. And it's pretty neat. I know that Elizabeth Ellis was quite fascinated by it the first time I did it in a workshop. And even asked me to repeat it. Because people in the workshop wanted to take pictures of it. But here is a story that's more on the serious side. My father worked for the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company for 43 years. He was a foreman and had a gang, that's what they call it, a gang of men who repaired, replaced, and searched for gas lines in Baltimore City and some surrounding areas. This was back, he started this, he retired in 1965 after 43 years. So he was doing this in the 20s. He often, as a young man, volunteered for every extra bit of work he could get. He lived during the Depression, and so luckily the gas company was a place that needed people constantly. And when he became a foreman, he started to specialize in gas leaks. In the old days, back in the 40s, 50s, gas lines in the city sometimes developed a leak because of all kind of problems with the street. The lines sometimes went under streets. Sometimes they went under streets in parallel. along the direction of the road or the street, and sometimes they crossed the street. And sometimes there would be a gas leak because of damage to the street or something. And so the company, when they were aware of that, would call out a group of men who specialized in working on gas leaks. And my dad had developed that ability or that desire to do that because there was extra pay in that. And, he had a family. And in the 40s, when I was a young boy, I don't remember the exact year, but I believe it must have been around 47 or so. My father went to a gas leak and was they had to dig a hole, find the pipe, and try to seal it, find out if there was a place they could turn the gas off. Or anyway, while he was in that hole, and he was near the gas leak itself, for some reason there was a spark or an electrical connection or something that set that gas off, and he was in a gas explosion. That resulted in my father being in the hospital for a while. He is burned on the left side of his head and on part of his body. His clothes were burned badly. Luckily, just as the explosion began, I learned this years later from Dad. He said as he was looking directly at the pipe where the leak was, he thought he saw a glow, and so he turned to climb out of that hole, and because he thought it might be a fire, and sure enough it was. And luckily, because he was climbing out of the hole, he wasn't killed. If he had been in that hole, he probably would have been burned to death. But the interesting thing about that was he was home for quite a while, worked for the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, and at the time they did not have a union. And my dad was always against unions because that accident occurred. He was in the hospital, then he was home for quite a while. A nurse came at first to check his bandages and change them, and then they trained my mother in how to do that. At first, they had a nurse do it because it needed to be done just right. But Dad was home for quite a while. He had a bandage around a good bit of his head. His left ear was kind of scorched from it, and he would sit near the front window, and back in the 40s, 50s, and people often sat in their living room near the front or sat on the front steps. And at first during his recovery, he would sit by the front window and watch what was going on, sometimes read, but he kind of looked like the mummy from the movies. And depending on how he was facing in his chair, a good bit of his head was wrapped for the first bit of that recovery. And so kids that I grew up with and kids in the neighborhood, people that passed by, started talking about Mr. Paul the mummy. And that was really funny to us after we were over the shock of my dad being injured, and we knew for sure that he was going to be okay. My dad always had funny remarks to make to us. He liked joking and stuff. Maybe I got that from him, but I remember him saying that anybody who knows me would know that I would never hide this gorgeous face of mine by wrapping it up with these bandages unless it was necessary. And he would laugh. He thought that was so fun because he was a nice looking man. I don't think by any means was he gorgeous. He was just a nice looking human being. But he was good at making jokes about things like that. And I remember that it seemed forever that he was home. And the great thing about his company was they paid the hospital bills. They paid for the nurse to come to the house. They paid for all the medicines that he needed. There were a number of creams that he had put on the areas that were burned. And he got his salary every week. And that was the reason that he was against unions when they started talking about putting a union in there. And it was because he honestly felt that if there had been a union, he would not have been taken care of that well. There would have been a certain number of sick days and certain kind of thing. Because of that, because of my father's experience and because I knew about that, when I taught at a private school in the 90s, and teachers there had started to talk about forming a teachers' union, and we had quite a meeting about it. And the headmaster of the school invited people's opinions and things. And the board of the school was at that meeting. And I learned, I told them my father's story, and then I reminded the people in that faculty that during my second year of teaching there, I had a serious injury, and I needed surgery on my right knee, and I was out of school for 3 weeks. If we had a union, as they were proposing, with 5 sick days and 5 days for extraordinary injuries, I would have lost a lot of my pay. But there, the school paid my salary. I got paid every 2 weeks, and didn't cost any money because we didn't have a union. So I spoke against the union at that school. And
what happened?
We didn't get a union.
Did everybody get all their medical paid for after that?
They always had been. That's why I reminded them of that, because that's the policy at that school, was that people who worked there were taken care of.
Do you know how long that lasted? I would guess it's not the case anymore.
I would guess it might be different, but I have no reason to believe that. I still get, this is the school in Baltimore that I left in 1997. And here we are 23 years later, and I still get a monthly pension from them, even though I only taught there 6 years, and I never put a cent into that pension fund.
Was that your first school?
No,
was your first school.
That was I had been teaching 24 years when I went there, and it was a private school. I had left the public school to go to the private school. It was a special school, and still is a special school in Baltimore. A very nice school, very expensive for students.
Thank you, Stash.
You're welcome.
I had heard that story before about your dad and the explosion, but it was new all over again. I mean, I didn't remember all the details, and it's quite a story.
Yeah. It was scary at first.
Well, yeah.
But,
how old were you?
Oh, well, I was born in 41, and this happened sometime in the 40s. So the youngest, I don't think it happened during the war, because I believe it happened about a year or two after the war, World War II ended. So I was about 6 maybe. And the interesting thing to me because of that is that, and I've noticed this over the years, that no matter how frightened children are about something, with the right kind of care and assurances, they wind up understanding. At first, for a couple of weeks, I was terrified that my dad was going to die. Something was, that was terrible because he was bandaged and because of, what I heard the adults talking about. But afterwards, as he got better and better, he was able to share with me that things like that could happen in many ways, to many people who worked, firemen, and he reassured me that not every person who is injured is going to result in a death, and that you should kind of have faith in the people taking care of you. And I think that's a good thing. I've been in a hospital a number of times in my life, and I have absolute faith once I get to the hospital. I've been taken to the hospital in an ambulance countless times. Really, in Arkansas, in Pittsburgh, in Frederick, and in Sharpsburg. Every place Terry and I have lived together over the last 25 years, I've gone to the hospital.
Okay, but you're not going to the hospital this week.
No.
We have to close out the show. We are over time.
Oh, my goodness.
Do you want to close this out, or am I doing that?
I would like you to do it. I've been talking so much.
Thank you for listening. You've been listening to the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour at enlightenradio.org. Coming to you from Bolivar, West Virginia, I'm Fanny Crawford.
And I'm Stosh Ziolkowski.
And we're looking forward to hearing and seeing from you next week at 12 noon.
And do we have a theme for next week?
No.
Okay, we will.
We will, yes. This Enlightened Storytelling Hour brings together storytellers and listeners from all traditions, encouraging everyone to share and build their stories. That's it.
Thank you. And if John's listening, he can come and turn off.
Yes, he's here.
Oh, good. There he is.
Turn off.
There's a nice long pause between. Thank you. Goodbye.